What if I told you that the Japanese government spent over a century trying to erase an entire people from existence? Not through war, not through exile, but by making them disappear into Japanese society itself. This is the story about the Ainu, Japan's indigenous people. The Ainu people hold the key to Japan's deepest secret. The original inhabitants of the Japanese islands weren't the ancestors of modern Japanese people at all. And for over a century, Japan tried to erase this truth, not just from history books, but from existence itself. But DNA doesn't lie. And recent genetic studies have uncovered something that changes everything we thought we knew about Japanese origins. The Ainu aren't just another ethnic minority. They're living time capsules carrying the genetic signatures of humanity's most ancient journey into the Pacific. Here's the kicker. The Japanese government spent 150 years trying to make the Ainu disappear, calling them former Aborigines and banning their language, culture, and identity. But you can't erase genetics, and what scientists discovered in Ainu DNA is rewriting the entire story of human migration in East Asia. So it's 15,000 years ago, and most of Europe is still locked in ice. Agriculture doesn't exist. But in Japan, something extraordinary is happening. A group of hunter-gatherers has created the world's first pottery, thousands of years before anyone else even thinks of making pots. These are the Jomon people, and their story was supposed to be simple. Ancient hunter-gatherers who got replaced by more advanced rice farmers from the continent. End of story. But then, scientists got their hands on Ainu DNA. And everything changed. The maternal and paternal gene pools of the Ainu contain 25 mtDNA sequence types and 3 Y haplogroups, respectively. 11 of the 25 mtDNA sequence types were unique to the Ainu and accounted for over 50% of their genetic diversity. Translation: the Ainu aren't just different from other Japanese people, they're genetically unique on the planet. The Ainu appear closely related to the Jomon peoples of Japan. According to previous genetic analyses of Jomon remains, they represent a deeply diverged East Asian lineage. But here's where it gets wild. This lineage didn't just diverge recently. The Jomon lineage is inferred to have diverged from ancient East Asians before the divergence between ancient Northern East Asians and ancient Southern East Asians. Think about that for a moment. The Ainu are carrying DNA that split from other East Asian populations before those populations even split from each other. They're like a genetic fossil, preserving human diversity that everywhere else has been mixed, diluted, or lost entirely. But there's more. Beyond their broad affinity with Eastern Asian lineages, the Jomon also display a weak affinity for ancient North Eurasians, ANE. The same genetic signature found in ancient Siberians and Native Americans. The Ainu are carrying genetic echoes of humanity's deepest migrations. Fast forward to 3,000 years ago. Across East Asia, everything is changing. In China, rice farming has triggered a population explosion. These Yayoi people, armed with metal tools, wet rice cultivation, and dense settlements, begin spreading across the region like a demographic tsunami. They hit Japan around 300 BCE, and the genetic impact is devastating. Modern Japanese people are essentially the product of this Yayoi expansion, mixing with existing Jomon populations. Various genetic data, classic markers, mitochondrial DNAs, Y chromosomes, and genome-wide single nucleotide polymorphisms, SNPs, have confirmed the coexistence of 3 major human populations on the Japanese archipelago: Ainu in Hokkaido, Ryukyuans in the southern islands, and mainland Japanese. But here's the plot twist. The Yayoi revolution barely touched the Ainu. While southern Japan was being transformed by rice farming and continental genetics, the Ainu in northern Hokkaido remained largely isolated. They kept their hunter-gatherer lifestyle, their ancient spiritual practices, and most importantly, their Jomon DNA. It's like finding a village that missed the Industrial Revolution, the Agricultural Revolution. For centuries, Japanese scholars had a simple story about their origins. Japan was settled by the ancestors of modern Japanese people, who developed into the sophisticated civilization we know today. The Ainu? They were just a small northern tribe, maybe descendants of Russians or some other foreign group. This narrative was convenient. It supported Japanese territorial claims, justified colonial expansion, and positioned Japan as the rightful heir to the entire archipelago. But in the late 20th century, genetic science began telling a very different story. The first shock came from mitochondrial DNA studies. Scientists discovered that the Ainu people are believed to have retained a strong genetic profile from the Jomon period. The Jomon people were an indigenous population that lived in the Japanese archipelago for over 10,000 years, while modern Japanese people showed clear genetic signatures of much more recent continental migration. Then came Y chromosome studies, revealing that Ainu paternal lineages were fundamentally different from those of mainland Japanese. The nuclear DNA studies that followed were even more dramatic. According to modern genetic analyses, they primarily have Northeast Asian, East Asian, and to a lesser extent, heterogeneous Jomon ancestries for mainland Japanese, while the Ainu showed overwhelming Jomon ancestry with minimal continental mixing. The implications were staggering. The Ainu weren't foreign immigrants to Japan. They were Japan's original inhabitants. Modern Japanese people were the immigrants. And every major demographic change of the last 3,000 years. When the Meiji government came to power in 1868, they faced a problem. How do you build a modern nation-state when your northern territory is inhabited by people who look different, speak a different language, and practice a completely different culture? Their solution was systematic cultural destruction. In 1899, the Japanese parliament enacted the Hokkaido Former Aborigines Protection Act, a law designed to achieve the assimilation of the Ainu population of northern Japan. The name itself was Orwellian. Former Aborigines Protection Act. It wasn't protecting anyone, it was erasing them. Legislation during the Meiji period also banned the use of the Ainu language in schools, government, and many other areas, while their land was distributed to the Yamato Japanese settlers to create and maintain farms in the model of Western industrial agriculture. But the destruction went deeper than laws. The Meiji government enacted laws that banned the Ainu language and traditions, labeling them as former Aborigines. This led to widespread loss of cultural identity and forced assimilation into Japanese society. Children were taken from their families and sent to Japanese schools, where speaking Ainu meant punishment. Traditional bear ceremonies, sacred religious practices, were banned as barbaric. Ainu clothing, tattoos, and even names were prohibited. These discriminatory government policies led to a population explosion, with Hokkaido's population soaring to over 1 million people, and the Ainu vastly outnumbered by settlers. The Ainu went from being the majority in their homeland to a tiny, persecuted minority in a matter of decades. Genetic past. The Ainu are genetically different from mainland Japanese living in Tohoku, the northern part of Honshu Island, despite being separated by just a few hundred miles. Genetically, the gap between Ainu and mainland Japanese is larger than the gap between many completely different ethnic groups. Here's the remarkable part. Despite 150 years of systematic oppression, Ainu genetics survived. Even as their language was banned, their children removed, their land stolen, and their identity criminalized, the genetic signatures of the Jomon people persisted in Ainu DNA. You can destroy a culture, but you can't legislate away genetics. Modern genetic studies reveal the extent of this survival. The sustained assimilation policies led to extensive cultural loss and population decline. By the 20th century, many Ainu struggled to preserve even fragments of their heritage. Yet their DNA tells a story of remarkable genetic continuity. What makes this even more extraordinary is that we have a control group. The Ryukyuan people of Okinawa also show significant Jomon ancestry, but they're geographically separated from the Ainu by the entire length of Japan. The genetic similarities between Ainu and Ryukyuans, despite centuries of isolation, prove that both populations are preserving different aspects of Japan's pre-Yayoi genetic heritage. It's like having two ancient libraries that survived different disasters, each preserving parts of the same lost civilization's knowledge. As genetic technology advanced, the Ainu revelations became even more startling. Whole genome sequencing revealed that the Ainu carry genetic variants that are incredibly rare or completely absent in other populations worldwide. The HLA system, your body's immune defense network, shows patterns in the Ainu that are unlike anything scientists have seen. They carry immune system variants that may have evolved to deal with Arctic and subarctic diseases. Genetic adaptations to a hunting and gathering lifestyle that persisted for thousands of years after the rest of East Asia had moved to agriculture. But here's the most shocking discovery. Some Ainu genetic variants show connections not just to ancient Jomon people, but to the founding populations that first entered the Americas.